everyone, and welcome to the beginning sewing series here on Daily Life with Deb. This is going to be honestly, I don't know how many part series, but at least 3 or 4 parts. No, probably at least 4. It may be more like 5 or 6 part series. Basically on learning how to sew. This series is going to be for just bare bones beginners. So if you already have a little bit of sewing experience and you just want to advance it a little further, I will have a few more advanced videos coming up a little bit later, but basically this is for someone that's always wanted to sew or just recently got an interest in sewing but has no clue where to start. So we're going to start with this selection of a sewing machine. Now, if you already have a sewing machine, maybe it was gifted to you for Christmas, or you inherited it from your grandma, or anything like that, then go ahead and just fast forward through this part of the video. One thing I will recommend, if it's not a brand new machine, if it's a used machine, I would recommend that you take it to a local sewing machine repair store, or somewhere like maybe even like Joann's or somewhere, a fabric store. They probably have a technician on hand that does sewing machine repair, and I would have them just go through it, clean it, oil it. You will later on be able to oil your own machine, but if you don't know where to start with this, then I would definitely have a professional look at it. And they will also be able to tell if it's in time or not. It's because it's really easy to throw your sewing machine out of time, and that's something we'll go into a little bit later. And a lot of used machines that you find will be out of time, but they can time them for you really easily. So I would just have them take a look at it, go through it, clean it, oil it, time it if it needs it. I don't even know what the cost of that is anymore. It used to not be very much, like $30 to $50, I think. But that was a number of years ago, and also it probably depends on what area of the country you're in, or of the world for that matter. So yeah, if you're going to go ahead and buy a new machine, think about what you're really going to want it for. If you're just going to want it for some a little bit of mending, maybe sew some throw pillows, or maybe eventually some doll clothes or something, you'll just need a pretty basic machine. You're just going to need one with a straight stitch, and let me show this to you. Now my sewing machine, let me get this back there. My sewing machine, I got this from a garage sale, so it actually has more stitches than I would really normally would use. I wouldn't normally buy one with this many stitches on it, but I got a really good deal at a garage sale, and it was a good machine, so I went ahead and bought it. So you want one with a straight stitch. This is what you will use for just all your seams. This is your basic sewing stitch. You're going to be using this one the most. And then it is good to have a zigzag stitch. These are all zigzags. They're just different variations. A zigzag stitch, that's what I use to finish all my edges, all my raw edges, just to keep them from unraveling. Some machines will have like variations of an overedge stitch like this. You can also finish your seams with that, but it is really not necessary. If you can get one with just a straight stitch and a zigzag, that's totally fine for most sewing. An added bonus is one that has a buttonhole, an automatic buttonhole stitch built in, depending if you're planning to do anything with buttonholes or not. But for most machines will have this, and I would try to get one with that, because if you don't think you'll need it and then you randomly have some project that needs a button later on, you're going to really be happy you have that. So yeah, let me get this set up there you can see me. Yeah, so a really basic machine. I don't think you would need one that's computerized or anything like that. That's all pretty fancy, and you don't really need it for basic sewing. If you decide later that you want to do some embroidery and that sort of thing, and if you have the money for the embroidery machines, they're a little bit more expensive, but if you can get one with embroidery stitches and stuff, definitely go ahead and go for that, because those will still have the basic stitches on them. But yeah, just for basic sewing, and especially for beginners, I would just get something fairly cheap. Brother has a pretty basic one. I can't think of the model number, but there's some, if you just look for the Brother brand, they're a pretty decent starter sewing machine. I don't know much about the Singers anymore. Singer has always been, traditionally has been just a good solid brand, but I've heard some complaints more recently that they're not as good anymore, so I can't really say for them. This Singer I have is probably, I think it's like from the 90s. And I actually learned on a Singer from the 50s, but, and that's always an option too. But, okay, I think that our first step is we're going to go through the anatomy of the machine, and then I'll show you all how to thread it and wind a bobbin and explain tension and all that. Okay, first of all, we have the anatomy of the sewing machine. We'll start at this end. Most of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory, but if I use a term or refer to a certain part that you're not sure about, this is to explain. This is pretty much what every sewing machine has. Every sewing machine is going to have a spool holder for your main spool of thread, your top thread, and it'll have a bobbin winder, and then your I'm sorry, I don't even know what they call the wheel here, basically, but and then you'll have a reverse stitch. Oftentimes it's a button or a switch. That's for obviously changing the direction of the feed dog, which is down here. I'll explain that in a minute. So that'll be sorry, totally lost my train of thought for a minute. That will be for back stitching, which you use at the end of your seams to secure your stitch. This is for stitch length. Often machines will actually have a dial for this, or if it's computerized, it may even have buttons. I'm not totally sure. This here is just for this machine. It's just to select the stitch. So most sewing machines will not have that. This is for your tension. Most sewing machines, if you just keep it on auto, it will work just fine. If you start having like loops appearing on the bottom or the top of your stitching, and like your stitching is just becoming a tangled mess, then your tension is not right, and that will need to be adjusted. We won't go into that today because if you keep it on auto, it will more than likely not be a problem. If there is a problem with that, I mean, I can address that later in another video, but if there is a problem with that, feel free to leave me a comment and I will explain how to fix your tension. And this here, a lot of sewing machines won't have that. That's just for this machine to select. It's another lever for selecting stitches. Let me actually get this plugged in so I can get the light turned on, and I can show you the rest of that. Okay. This here is called the presser foot. You'll probably hear me refer to the presser foot a lot. So that's what that is. This is a removable, not all sewing machines have this, but some of them. I'm just going to take that off just so it's easier to show you this stuff. Okay, and these here, let me go ahead and, these here are the feed dogs. That's what I was talking about, where the reverse stitch just changes the direction. This is what actually feeds your fabric through. This here is the bobbin case, and this here is the bobbin itself. So, there we go. I'm going to show you all how to thread a bobbin, or how to wind a bobbin, I should say. Let me check this and make sure that I have, let me move that up a little bit. Okay. need to take your top thread, place it on your spool holder, and if you have bought a new sewing machine, you'll just want to refer to your manufacturer's directions in your instruction book to see how to wind a bobbin. If you bought a sewing machine from a thrift store, garage sale, or inherited one, you may want to look up the model number to see how you wind the bobbin, because every sewing machine is a little bit different, but they're also very similar. So there goes a show off in a truck. I have my windows open today and we live pretty close to the road, so always hear a lot of traffic. So this is for your tension, this little thingamajiggy, I don't even know what you call it. Usually you wrap that around in a clockwise manner. And like I say, there's variations of this, but this is how most of them are going to be pretty similar. And I couldn't find an empty bobbin, so I'm just going to show you a little bit on this one that's already has some on it. You'll thread it through the hole at the top of the bobbin. You put it on your bobbin winder, and usually it'll move over and get in a position, because otherwise it won't turn when it's in that position. And then your wheel here, oftentimes there's like a lock. You'll either turn it to unlock it, or turn it to unlock it to where it only spins the bobbin winder and it does not operate the machine. This one here actually has a button you push in, so that's gonna vary for each machine too, but pretty much all of them are gonna have some variation of that. And then you just gently press your foot, or not your foot, your foot pedal, I mean. Usually this naturally will wind it up and down, but I oftentimes will guide it a little bit if it's going a little bit more on one side or the other. And I didn't bring my scissors over here, but usually when I have enough on here to hold this thread, then I will cut it, but I guess just snapping it's fine. And this thread I'm demonstrating with is a very cheap thread, very low quality. That's how I was able to just grab it and snap it. You couldn't do that with a quality thread, which is what I highly recommend, is a better quality thread. From Walmart, it's going to probably be around $3 a spool. This cheap thread was I bought a bag of it for like $4, and there was like 8 spools in it. That's super, super cheap thread. It might be fine for hand sewing, but I do not recommend it for a sewing machine, because you're just going to have a lot of problems with your thread snapping while you're trying to sew, and it can just be a royal pain. There are lots and lots of sewing tools and supplies available out there, but the vast majority of them are going to be for specialty work. For the basic sewing, this is really all you'll need. You need a sharp pair of scissors. They don't even have to be real high dollar. I don't recommend just the dollar store ones. I got these from Walmart. I think they were like $5 or $6. And you can pay all the way up to $50 or $60 or maybe even more for a pair, but you obviously don't need anything that good. Just a medium grade pair of scissors, is just as long as they're sharp. There's nothing worse than trying to cut fabric with dull scissors. Next would be a measuring tape. You're going to need this for almost any sewing project. And a sewing measuring tape is good because it's flexible, it's soft, it's flexible. I actually have used like a regular carpenter's measuring tape in the past for a straight measuring, but it's really difficult to use, and these don't cost much, and so you would definitely need one of these. Now here is my faithful sidekick. You're not going to want to use it necessarily, but you're going to have to sometimes, and it's a seam ripper. And as the name implies, it's for ripping out seams. Because as with anything new, you're going to make mistakes, and you're always going to have to rip out some seams, and so you can start over. When I was first learning, I learned how to sew from a Mennonite lady, And she would always tell me, a good seamstress rips, rips, rips. And my mom would tell me that when I was practicing, and it used to be so frustrating. But I still think I still hear my mom telling me that, saying that whenever I rip out a seam. So in a way, even though it was frustrating at the time, I'm kind of grateful I have those memories. Oops. So, and last but not least is sewing pins. There's a lot of different kinds of pins out there. You won't want to use safety pins. They can be a pain. Just go to your sewing section, and a lot of the time, the ones they have there now actually have a big plastic head, and they're longer than this, which I actually really like those. I just happened to get these years and years ago. I think they were in a box from an auction or something, and there was like thousands of them. So, and I still have a whole big, like, quart-sized jar of those. So I've been using these for years, but the little longer plastic head ones are nice. And there we have it. We've gone into how to select a machine, a sewing machine, and what to look for. We've gone over the basic anatomy of the machine, how to wind the bobbin, and we've wrapped it up with some of your basic supplies you'll need for basic sewing. Stay tuned to my channel for the next video in this series, where we will be going into some glossary and some terms and some actual how-to. We'll actually be sewing a project in the next video. So until then, gather up your supplies, get your machine if you don't have one, and if you do, don't forget to take it to a professional to have him look it over and oil it and clean it and get it all ready for you. Whatever here you don't have, go on out and get it, because I think we'll probably need it in the very next video. And hopefully we won't need our seam ripper, but there's always that chance. So I look forward to doing the rest of this series with you all, teaching you how to sew. It really, really is a very enjoyable pastime, and it's a constructive pastime as well. So until then, take care and God bless.